The missing persons case of Johnny Gosch.
Missing since September 5th, 1982, West Des Moines, Iowa.
The disappearance of the 12-year-old paperboy, Johnny Gosch, was a very influential case, in that it brought so much more awareness to missing children's cases in the United States. The report of the boy's possible whereabouts shows how extremely important it is to locate them as soon as possible.
Johnny's parents had few resources to help them find their son. There were no national missing children's hotlines, no Amber Alerts, no geo-targeted missing persons posters, no rapid deployment teams, no DNA database.
It would be 2 more years before the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was founded, and other advocates opened their doors.
Johnny Gosch, the child of Noreen and John Gosch. Johnny was born on November 12, 1969. He has light brown hair, blue eyes, and stood 5 foot 2 inches tall and weighing about 140 pounds. Johnny had landed himself a job delivering newspapers for the Des Moines Register. Johnny's father John would accompany him on his paper routes. After Johnny felt he had gotten the hang of it, he started asking his father if he could go on the route on his own, but John and Noreen refused.
I believe that Johnny was trying to be independent and felt no need to be chaperoned.
So on the morning of September 5th, 1982, Johnny got up early and left for his route before his parents woke up. He left home before dawn and left the home wearing a white sweatshirt with Ken's Academy printed on it, sweatpants, and blue flip-flops. He was pulling his red wagon that he used to haul the morning's deliveries. Noreen was awakened by a telephone call around 7 a.m. It was a neighbor stating they hadn't received their paper that morning. Johnny's father, John, immediately got up and went to investigate. He found Johnny's wagon about 2 blocks away. It still had the morning paper deliveries in it. John rushed back home to inform Noreen, and they called the police.
A parent's worst nightmare was unfolding before their eyes. Their child was missing. At this time, in the 80s, it was policy that a child wasn't considered actually missing until they were gone for 72 hours, which I'm sure felt like an eternity.
Noreen stated that it probably took police about 45 minutes to arrive to their home to take their report. At this time, the police were treating it like a runaway. John and Noreen strongly disagreed with their findings. Authorities later changed their statement and felt Johnny had been kidnapped, but there was no viable motive established. Johnny's parents went to seek out any witness that could give them answers. Other paper carriers for the Des Moines Register would later report having seen Johnny at the paper drop, picking up his newspapers.
It was the last sighting of Johnny that can be corroborated by multiple witnesses.
One of the paper boys that had last seen Johnny was named Mike. He stated that he saw Johnny talking to a stocky man in a blue 2-toned car near the paper drop.
Another boy, John Rossi, stated that he saw the man in the blue Ford Fairlane talking to Johnny and thought something was strange.
The man pulled up next to where the boys were gathering and turned his car off. He opened the passenger door and stepped out onto the curb. Johnny told Rossi that the man was asking where 86th Street was and wondered if he could help with directions. Rossi told John and Noreen that Johnny turned to him and said, "I've got my papers loaded up in the wagon. I'm scared. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to head home." Rossi remembers looking at the license plate, but couldn't recall the numbers. Later, Rossi even underwent hypnosis and told police some of the numbers and that the plate was from Warren County, Iowa. As Johnny was leaving, the car started to follow him, but the driver flicked the dome light 3 times before he pulled away. He was likely signaling someone, because then the boys said they saw a tall man walk out from between 2 houses. The man followed Johnny along 42nd Street to Marcord Lane. Along the way, another paper boy noticed a man following Johnny as he passed by. A neighbor stated that he was awakened by a car door slamming. He jumped up to look out the window and noticed a car turning and roll through the stop sign. West Des Moines Police Lieutenant Jeff Miller, a rookie cop at the time, stated police had began scouring the area immediately, but hit one wall after another. They went ahead and called in the staff, Miller said. The troopers. They called in detectives, reserves, contacted Polk County Sheriffs, the State Patrol. At that point, they did a door-to-door canvass of that neighborhood trying to find someone who saw something of Johnny. Nothing was found, and they saw nothing at all, said Miller.
It just doesn't seem like it could happen in your neighborhood 2 blocks from your house.
The most disheartening thing for John and Noreen was the pronouncement from Captain Bob Rushing of the West Des Moines Police Department, who was in charge of the investigation, when he said, "There was no crime scene. Nobody saw anything that, to us, was an explanation to the boy's disappearance. He just vanished." The police turned up little evidence and made no arrests in connection with Johnny's case.
The Gosches tried so hard to work with police, but this made them see that they needed to conduct their own investigation to get things moving in Johnny's favor.
Noreen Gosch kept meticulous notes about her son's disappearance and documented the first 2 years in an early chapter, "They Have No Crime, I Have No Son," the first 2 years, in a book she'd later publish about her unsuccessful efforts to work with the police and what it took to finally get law enforcement's attention. Noreen was going to give every ounce of her being to search for her son and find out the truth. 1 month after her son's disappearance, Noreen founded the Johnny Gosch Foundation and also developed a program called In Defense of Children. She began touring the nation, making nearly 1,000 personal appearances with law enforcement, missing persons organizations, those involving human trafficking, and doing whatever she could to increase overall awareness of crimes involving children.
9 months after Johnny's disappearance, March 1983, a woman claimed that a young boy came up to her in a convenience store parking lot in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was yelling, "I'm Johnny Gosch, I've been kidnapped." And then 2 men quickly grabbed him, and they were never seen again.
Several private investigators have assisted the Gosches with their search for their son. Among them are Jim Rothstein, a retired New York City police detective, and Ted Gunderson, a retired chief of the Los Angeles FBI branch. They followed up on leads that were never pursued by authorities in Des Moines. Noreen had been told and believed that her son had been abducted by human traffickers. Over the next few years, more evidence surfaced. A dollar bill was turned over to the Gosches with a message written on it that said, "I am alive, Johnny Gosch." Noreen confirmed it to be her son's handwriting. Then, in Denver, Colorado, the words, "Johnny Gosch was here," was written in red nail polish on a restaurant's bathroom wall. On July 1st, 1984, almost 2 years after Johnny went missing, a bill Noreen authored, the Johnny Gosch Bill, was passed into Iowa law.
It mandated immediate police involvement whenever a child went missing, and was subsequently adopted by 8 additional states.
That same year, she went to Washington, D.C., and testified before Congress during hearings on organized crime. Her testimony, she said, led to death threats, and also, in part, the eventual establishment of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. President Ronald Reagan invited her to the center's opening and dedication.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm signing 2 bills that will provide peace of mind, I think, to many of our citizens. This first bill will begin to address the tragedy of America's missing children. Every year in this country, thousands of children disappear from their homes. The Missing Children Act will reassure parents that every effort is being made to find, or in more tragic circumstances, to identify their children. Finding missing children has become a national problem. Because of overlapping jurisdictions and the lack of centralized information, parents of missing children have faced frustration and anger in their attempts to locate their children.
23 months from Johnny's disappearance, on August 12, 1984, another paperboy vanished from Des Moines. This time, 13-year-old Eugene Martin. After Eugene Martin disappeared in 1984, a relative working at Anderson and Erickson Dairy in Des Moines reached out to the company president, Jim Erickson, for help. The Register had run full-page ads with the boys' pictures and information, and a local trucking company had put poster-size images of the boys on the sides of their trucks. The employee wondered if there wasn't something A&E could do to help. Erickson said yes, and that same month began running photos and short bios about the boys on the sides of the dairy's half-gallon milk cartons.
It got the boys' faces into thousands of area homes every morning. And this brought on the original milk carton kids, Johnny Gosch and Eugene Martin, courtesy of A&E Dairy.
We're 82 years old, and we are a family-owned company. We're on the third generation right now. Of course, we were the first one to put the side panels on for the missing children.
1 week after A&E launched the milk carton program, Prairie Farms Dairy in Des Moines decided to do the same, and the project soon exploded on a nationwide basis. This idea led to other items being used to display kids' faces: shopping bags, soda bottles, billboards. But the Missing Children Milk Carton campaign is short-lived. It runs only a few years and ends after many parents complain that seeing the pictures of missing kids every day is scaring their own children. In 1989, Noreen met with a man who claimed Johnny was kidnapped by a child prostitution ring. Paul Bonacci, who was 21 years old, was also a victim of the sex ring and had been victimized by them when he was younger. He stated that the underage prostitution den was ran by Lawrence E. King, Jr., a Republican Party activist and businessman, who also served as the director of the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska. These allegations also connected high-level U.S. politicians as being involved in the child prostitution ring, which was said to be a cult of devil worshippers involved in mutilation, sacrifice, and cannibalism of numerous children. Alleged abuse victims were interviewed and claimed that children who were in foster care were flown to the East Coast to be sexually abused by bad parties. Paul Bonacci stated that he was one of these victims.
When Noreen met with Paul, she had no doubt that he had known Johnny. He knew of things that only the family knew about.
When Johnny went missing, the public was told about a birthmark on his chest. But Paul told Noreen about the scar on Johnny's tongue, a scar on his lower leg from a burn, and that he would stutter when he got upset. These things were never disclosed to the public. This just solidified her suspicions of her son being abducted by child prostitution and human trafficking criminals. Authorities didn't believe Paul to be a credible witness, so they just didn't interview him. Talk about kicking someone when they're down. Separate state and federal grand juries concluded that the allegations were unfounded and the sex ring was just a carefully crafted hoax.
After her son had been missing for about 15 years, Noreen dropped a bombshell.
She said she knew what happened to Johnny. She stated that she heard a knock at her door, and when she looked through the peephole, there were 2 young men. She asked who was there, and the voice answered, "Mom, it's me, Johnny. Can I come in?" She opened the door and said she knew right away that it was her son. Johnny Gosch, now 27 years old, told Noreen that he had escaped his captors and was laying low to avoid repercussions. She said her son told her he had been a victim of a pedophile ring and was cast aside when he was too old. Fearing for his safety, he assumed a new identity and could not return home, she said. He told his mother he needed her help bringing the abductors to justice. Unfortunately, he told Noreen he would likely not visit her ever again.
Johnny left, not saying where he was living or where he was going.
Noreen went to the FBI to have them make out a new sketch of her adult son. Johnny's father, who had been divorced from Noreen for years, has stated publicly that he's not sure if such a visit occurred. Law enforcement has never confirmed it, and there has been speculation that the visit could have happened. But if it did, it was likely someone pretending to be Johnny, which sadly sometimes occurs in long-term missing cases. 9 years later, early one September morning in 2006, Noreen said a mysterious envelope showed up on her front doorstep. Inside, she said, she found 3 disturbing photos of several boys, all tied up. One of these boys appeared to be Johnny. "I literally could not breathe. I could not get my breath," Noreen stated in an interview. "I was so totally unprepared to see something like that. All these years had gone by, and here was this picture." The image in question depicted a young boy, hogtied, and wearing only his underpants and socks. She took the photos to the West Des Moines Police Department. She said they spread them out, and the detective kept saying, "That's Johnny, that's Johnny." Noreen said, "I know that's Johnny."
The press went wild. Newspapers and television stations across the country were reporting Johnny's story.
Then came a call from West Des Moines Police Department, who told Noreen they were planning a press conference of their own. They planned to announce the pictures weren't of Johnny after all. Noreen said that the picture is Johnny, and the detective said to her, well, somebody from Florida called in and said he used to be an investigator and remembered the pictures, those pictures, from a case in 1970-something. Noreen said she asked the detective if the caller had provided them with any evidence, and he'd respond with no, telling her they just had the phone call. And based on this phone call, you're going to do a press conference and say the pictures aren't Johnny? She recalled asking him. And he said, well, yes, I am.
To this day, Noreen believes that the boy in the photo is her son, and that he was bound, gagged, abused, and taken by these people.
Police continue to insist it's not him. We found out where the photos were taken, Lieutenant Miller stated. We talked with the investigators in Florida, and they were able to identify all of the kids in the picture, and they weren't Johnny Gosch.
Despite the controversy surrounding Johnny's case, Noreen has never stopped trying to identify her son's abductors and continues to raise awareness about child kidnapping and human trafficking.
There's no continuation and finish of a grieving process because you can't. It's still open.
That's what Noreen Gosch, the mother of the would-be 52-year-old Johnny, told Local 5 10 years ago. His disappearance inspired her to fight to make changes to laws, eventually bringing about the Johnny Gosch Law.
I vowed that when Johnny was kidnapped, this kidnapping would not go down in the pages of history as just another tragedy that happened to a kid. Every missing child deserves an immediate investigation.
Her lobbying has helped change the laws and improve child safety. Noreen said, the things that are good is the awareness that this has brought. The case changed the country. It was a watershed case. In the ideal world, he is alive, and he comes home, and everybody's happy, Lieutenant Miller said. But in the real world, more than likely, our best lead will come when his body is found. And at that point, it becomes a crime scene. If you have any information about Johnny Gosch's disappearance or whereabouts, please call the Missing Person Information Clearinghouse, Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation at 515-725-3036. Thanks so much for watching my video. Be sure to subscribe to Ride Around with me and hear more missing persons cases. Here's 2 more videos to check out in case you missed them.